Hello, this is Justin Williams with the Wolfpacker Podcast. I'm joined today, as always, by co-host Matt Carter. And today we're going to talk about a crazy weekend in NC State sports. Obviously, anyone listening to this podcast has already heard the news. NC State was eliminated, disqualified from the College World Series in the wee hours of Saturday morning by the NCAA due to, we now know, 8 positive COVID tests on the team. Obviously, there was some COVID spread going on there, but an absolutely heartbreaking end to what was a very, very special season for NC State baseball. The Wolfpack was going for the school's first national championship for a team sport since 1983. NC State baseball was 3 wins away from that. So, obviously, some big news to break down here. Before we get started into the conversation with Matt, please remember to subscribe, rate, and review this podcast wherever you listen to us. We're on the Apple Podcast app, Spotify, Google Play, everywhere you listen to podcasts. Plus, you can always listen to us on thewolfpacker.com, where you should use that promo code PACK60 for a free 60-day trial on all of our premium content, news, and analysis. The good news for Wolfpack fans, they might not want to hear it right now, football recruiting is going really well. So use that promo code PACK60 if you want some positive news, because I'm sure NC State fans could use a little bit of positive news after the weekend that they've had. I was there at the Doak yesterday, where there were about 2,000 NC State fans awaiting the baseball. Saturday night. Everything's been a blur these past 48 hours, Matt. For those listeners at home, we're on a magazine deadline, and probably the biggest news of NC State athletics in the past calendar year has happened over the weekend. So obviously Matt and I have been busy at work here, but Matt, let's take ourselves back to Friday afternoon. You and I are sitting there. We're actually in the office together, about to watch the game that was planned to start at 2 p.m. Eastern time. And around 1 o'clock, things started to get a little bit fishy because late morning, early afternoon, people started noticing the gambling line was adjusting, that Vanderbilt was becoming a heavier favorite, NC State was becoming a heavier underdog. Of course, NC State had an opportunity to punch its ticket to the College World Series championship series with a win in this game. So this was a big game going into Friday afternoon, but we start getting rumors that JT Jarrett is unavailable to play, that he's heading home, that Evan Justice was unavailable due to potential COVID-19 tests, but nothing was official at that point. This was all rumors and hearsay. Around 1 o'clock, things began to get a little bit quiet, and as we got closer and closer to first pitch, there was no roster released, which is typically released 45 minutes to 30 minutes before the game, and then more signs came on. So, Matt, let's go back to that time. What was kind of going through your head, and when did you realize something was fishy about Friday afternoon? Because there was an eerie feel about 1 o'clock.
Yeah, but I think you and I was getting all these phone calls, and you and I were talking. I mean, truth be told, if we pulled back the curtain even further, it was mid-morning that things started. Really, it just was trying to verify everything was challenging, and you were getting nothing official from NC State. But you were getting a lot of rumors that seemed to be very credible and coming from people who the combination of what you were hearing, from who you were hearing it from, and the lack of any kind of pushback from NC State made you think something was really up here. And then the Vegas line moved. Probably started moving about an hour or so after you and I first started talking about it and getting some of these rumors in. And then at that point, you knew that this was, Vegas knows all, right? I mean, isn't that the phrase? And so you knew at that point this was getting serious. And I think what caught everybody off guard was the number of players that ended up being held out. I mean, the rumors all along, and tell you that in the fog of war, if you want to call it that, or the fog of rumors, that not everything is true. We were hearing the rumors too. And I believe a radio station in Nashville went with the report that Sam Highfield it was 3 players, and it included Sam Highfield. Now, to be fair, that was the rumor we were hearing too. We never reported such, because it was hard. The only hard information that we really felt really good about was JT Jarrett was sent home. And if you go back even further, you and I talked about this. Elliott Avent was talking about a bug, quote unquote, that was going through the team.
That raised eyebrows.
Yeah. And they mentioned JT Jarrett as one of the guys who was under the weather. He specifically mentioned JT Jarrett. So JT Jarrett was clearly showing symptoms of some kind of sickness, but apparently was testing, I believe he tested positive
on Tuesday.
Now we find out. So, Elliott Avent didn't give any signs of concern. He was on Packer and Durham on Wednesday. So there didn't seem to be any signs of concern at that point. But that was the only thing we were certain about. And then obviously Sam Highfield was fine. He got 3 hits to prove that on Friday against Kumar Walker of everybody. So he was obviously fine. So just to tell you, not all the rumors were true. But when the Vegas line started moving, that's when you started thinking something was all these rumors we were hearing in the morning coming from credible people without a pushback from NC State was probably true. What was surprising was you come back and hear only 13 were available. That was the mind-blowing moment of it all Friday.
And the confirmation that JT Jarrett tested positive on Tuesday, I believe that was originally reported by Kendall Rogers in his article on d1baseball.com. If you haven't read that, that's a really great read that lays out the timeline really since the Sunday before NC State even played Vanderbilt for the first time. So it really goes over about 7 days worth of detailed itineraries of what happened, and it's a well-sourced article. So if you really want the facts of everything that happened, because there's still a lot of rumors out there, there's still a lot of, I guess, beliefs that there's some, strings behind all of this that doesn't exist. This isn't necessary. This is not a vendetta against NC State. This is not some conspiracy that the NCAA is trying to haunt NC State and rob it from winning the national championship. This was just really a case of absolutely rotten luck to a team that was on a magical run, and the emotions of the moment, the high stakes of the moment, make it a very frustrating topic to fathom. I mean, This is a heartbreaking moment for these players and Elliott Avent and that coaching staff to go through, because they got stripped of a very special opportunity to compete for a national championship. But those are the facts, so we got to stick to those.
Yeah, here's the facts that according to Kendall Rogers reports, and look, there are 2 guys in the college baseball reporting world that if they report it, you can probably bank on it, particularly with regard to NC State. Aaron Fitt, who also from d1baseball.com and who actually lives in the Triangle. He lives in Durham, if I recall. He's been on our podcast before. And then Kendall Rogers, who kind of the Adrian Wojnarowski of college baseball. He's the guy that gets all the scoops. He gets all the coaching hires. He knows he's in tune to everything humanly possible in college baseball. Now, obviously, it's not a glorified, highly watched beat, I guess you could say. It's a growing sport. So maybe a lot of parents don't know Kendall Rogers and probably don't really start paying attention until May and June. But he's the guy that as well-sourced as anybody. So there's no reason not to believe. And just for a quick timeline, it sounds like JT Jarrett tested positive Tuesday after the win over Vanderbilt. His roommate was Evan Justice. And so at the time, it sounded like it was just a matter of Evan Justice having to be quarantined in protocol. I agree with you. This isn't a conspiracy, everybody's shooting. And honestly, I talked to somebody Sunday who knew some people at Mississippi State, and I talked to a couple other people that kind of corrected me on a false assumption that I made, that maybe Tim Corbin of Vanderbilt was kind of raising a stink, and it's pretty clear that was not the case. Tim Corbin, the head coach of Vanderbilt, had nothing to do with anything here. Again, that was one of those rumors that got out there. I don't think it's a conspiracy against NC State. I think where you could maybe have reasonable, rational debate, and if you want to get into it, and fans can maybe be frustrated, and we're given the emotions of the moment, understandably frustrated, is the decision to cancel when you had, I think they traveled with 29 players, maybe 30. You had 20 guys still testing negative.
27, I think, was the travel roster size.
Okay. So you had about 19 players still testing negative. Could you have played with those guys? And that was the question. And I don't think the NCAA had a guidebook. I don't think there was any kind of established written protocol. They clearly misrepresented when they said that the Omaha Health Department
advised them to eliminate NC State.
Basically implied that this was a decision made in cahoots with the Omaha Health Department, and then Omaha comes out and said, "No, we didn't make any recommendations. We just
whoa! Don't throw us in this."
Yeah, and they said, "Look, we told them we would support whatever decision they made." So this was clearly an NCAA decision, and I think that you and I talked about it. Maybe I talked about it with somebody else. It just seems like they kind of panicked.
Yes.
When 4 vaccinated players came back. So we did not know until the D1 baseball report with 2 more tested positive Friday. And so there were actually 4 unvaccinated players that had tested positive by Friday, which led to the decision at that point to pull all unvaccinated players off the field. And again, that's one of those decisions of where is that in the guidebook? Is there any kind of guidelines that says that's the decision you make? What about contact tracing and all? There's where the fair complaints come to play. And so, and to your larger point, it's just kind of rotten luck that some players tested positive at this point and this time. And then 4 more vaccinated players tested positive on overnight Friday night into Saturday morning. And, that's where did the NCAA panic and call it right then and there without maybe saying, hey, let's wake up in the morning, think about this, maybe do one more round of testing, think about can they play with these guys that are still testing negative and have tested negative all week? Or is it just unrealistic to expect that contact tracing wouldn't get all these guys caught up? So I honestly think if they're going to complain about the NCAA, is that maybe they had kind of let their guard down when it comes to COVID-19 guidelines and protocols, because every team were having send-off parties, they were having rallies, there were 20-some thousand fans, and clearly things were relaxed around Omaha.
Well, the hypocrisy with the NCAA is nothing new. Now, I want to get into the NCAA topic more because I can't believe I'm going to say what I'm going to say, because I don't think, me, Matt, you've been around me a lot for the past at least year now, and you know my opinions of the NCAA. You know that I'm one that will take every opportunity to take a punch at the NCAA, and I look at the NCAA as critically as anybody. However, I think in this particular scenario, the NCAA might be getting a little bit more heat than it necessarily deserves. I will say it did not handle this situation perfectly at all. That is not what I'm trying to say. I think there are fair critiques of the handling of the situation, the PR management of the situation. I mean, really just the health guidelines, that the protocols were not detailed enough to have in writing what exactly happens in the event that this is the case. They should have planned better. But at the end of the day, I really think that as much as we can critique all of those things, the end result probably would have ended up being the same, considering that there were 8 positive tests that resulted from 1 initial positive test on Tuesday into 8 by Friday. That's showing spread within a program. That is a liability for the NCAA. And they say what you want about them, but I do think they are genuine in the fact that they have made every attempt to try to make these championships safe for the players on the field, in the sense that they have done over 100,000 tests. And I think I saw a quote in that D1Baseball.com article that the positive rate of those tests, those 127,000 tests that they've administered over 50-plus NCAA championships over the past year, there was a positivity rate of about 0.4%. It's very low. It might even be lower than that, 0.04. I mean, it was okay. So we're talking about a very, very, very small sample size here. But the NCAA probably was going to make that decision either way. Here's the problem I have with the way they handled it. Why did that decision have to come at 2:10 in the morning on Saturday, merely hours after you discover these new positive tests from vaccinated individuals? The decision came down after 4 of the 13 vaccinated players that played in the game on Friday tested positive for coronavirus. As soon as that decision was made, within an hour, NC State was informed that it was disqualified from the College World Series. I don't understand why they couldn't have maybe waited until the next morning. You could maybe get a few more people on the phone than you could at 2:10 in the morning, and see if you can maybe try to work something out logistically. Because I think they really should have made every single effort possible to try to allow NC State to compete. And at the end of the day, if they couldn't find a reasonable solution that, health advisors would sign off on and made sense, then so be it. That's the end result. But it doesn't sound like they made every effort to try to make it work. It seemed like this was a situation that they were made aware of on Tuesday. They were well informed on what was going on here, and it seemed like you mentioned, Matt, they just kind of panicked when 4 vaccinated players tested positive. I don't know if they were, because I know there was multiple tests. There was antigen test and PCR test. Antigen test being a little bit higher margin for error for false negatives or positives. I don't know if the vaccinated individuals that tested positive got those PCR tests, to get a more reliable source. 4 vaccinated players testing positive for coronavirus does seem high. And we'll find out if it's this new Delta variant, because they're looking into the strains as we speak of those positives from the NC State baseball team. Who knows? I mean, if it ends up being the Delta variant, which is apparently more contagious, than the original coronavirus we've been dealing with for the past year, I mean, talk about a case of just pure bad luck if you run into this new variant of this disease that we've been dealing with for the past year and a half, it seems like at this point. But, I will say this, the NCAA, I'll give them a C for their handling of it. And that's better than they typically do. But I don't think it was an F, just because I still think the end result probably would have been the same. It was a strong spread of the disease, and I absolutely hate it for the players, the coaches, the fans. I mean, it's absolutely gut-wrenching. I mean, this is like a Final Four team in the NCAA tournament being eliminated because of, COVID-19 positives. But COVID-19 strikes again. It's obviously taken so many things from us over the past year and a half now. There's a lot bigger things than sports as well. May I remind the listeners, NC State baseball is not the only victim of COVID-19. So in the grand scheme of things, everyone's healthy, everyone's okay. I think that's a win. And the fact that there was 2,000 Wolfpack fans waiting for that team in Raleigh to show their support, there's no doubt in my mind that those players are proud of their accomplishment. The fans are proud of their accomplishment. And this season was an overwhelming success. You hate to see that they didn't compete for the championship, but you still don't know what would have happened. You wish you could see what happened, but it's just a case of rotten luck, and it's just a case where you understand why NC State fans are the way they are. They get gray hair early, and they hate the refs, and they hate the NCAA, and that's what makes NC State great. But
I would tell you too. I mean, you're right. It's sports, but this is something that they were obviously all passionate about, and it was a golden opportunity because Iowa State, bluntly, I think they were the best team in Omaha. I watched pretty much all the games. I think they were the best team in Omaha. There's a reason why the Pac-13 nearly beat Vanderbilt. It was a remarkable story. But they're a better team than Vanderbilt. I'll just say it bluntly. I have a lot of respect for Vanderbilt, as you know. Tim Corbin is on his way to being the Nick Saban of college baseball, the head coach of Vanderbilt. I just think they were a better team than Vanderbilt. Bluntly, point blank. I think they were a better team than Vanderbilt. And I think they could, if they had beaten, under normal circumstances, they beat Vanderbilt probably on Friday. They have their rotation in order, lined up, ready to go for the College World Series Championship Series. I do think Mississippi State was probably the second best team I've seen. That would have been a challenge. But I think they could have more than easily have won it. So when you have that right in front of you, and your chance for a golden moment in Pac sports history, to have it ripped away, you get the frustration, and it's just you get the anger and the frustration. I agree with you, though. I talked about it before. When you get the 8 positive tests, I don't know what the ultimate outcome would have been. I mean, yes, I strongly probably agree with that. The notion of let's wait till the morning. Let's talk to more health people in the morning. Let's see
nothing good happens after midnight.
Well, there's no reason why that decision had to be made at that time. Wake up in the morning, think about it. The game's not till 2:00.
You could have swapped games. You could have moved up the Texas Mississippi State game to 2 p.m. and put NC State Vanderbilt at 7.
And I don't know. That might have been unfair to those two teams because they had a rain delay.
Yeah.
And so apparently they didn't finish until 1 a.m. in the morning. So they asked them to turn around and adjust their time.
I also found it interesting that, well, in the D1Baseball.com story, I found it interesting that NC State requested a doubleheader on Saturday because they were given the option to play with 13 players on Friday or forfeit and try to roll their dice and play on Saturday for a winner-take-all game. Save their bull because they had 3 pitchers and one of them was playing first base. Or four pitchers. One of them was playing first base, was unavailable until at least Saturday. And the other 3 guys you got have pitched, collectively 35 innings all year?
Yeah, maybe 20. 20 to 30, yeah. But, that's why did you have to do it then? Consult the medical people. I will say there's plenty of evidence from Major League Baseball when they came back and they had a couple of teams have unbelievable spread. The Cardinals being a really big one where it just seemed like so many guys on the Cardinals got it. But who was the first team that got it? I forget who it was. The Marlins.
Yep.
Had a big spread, and they had actually played games. And the end result was nobody from the other teams ever got COVID playing. And so there's precedent that this wasn't necessarily a big health risk for Vanderbilt. And so could you have taken a little bit longer to figure out, okay, what are the real risks here? Let's take a look at test them one more time, to see what shows up and see what the real risk here. Ultimately, would it had ended the way it probably ended? I tend to think yes. I tend to think, you and I both know that there would have been a lot of uproar on the other side if it got out NC State had 8 players tested positive and everybody else was playing the game. That would have created uproar from the other side of the aisle of the debate. So it's just it is a sticky situation. I just go back to, I thought the NCAA let down their guard in the way they were handling things in Omaha and at the College World Series. And the biggest inconsistency I found in that D1 baseball report was it went from being worried about Evan Justice primarily to all of a sudden anybody who's not vaccinated is now questioned. Even though those guys, not only did they test negative on Friday, I think they tested negative again that night. So they have repeatedly been testing negative. So I'm not a scientist. I'm not a medical guy. I don't know all the answers. You don't know all the answers. Our listeners probably don't know all the answers except for maybe a couple of them out there. So it's just frustrating because you wanted that chance. You wanted that opportunity. And is there any humanly way possible to make it work? Could you make it work? And you don't feel like, from an NC State perspective, you didn't feel like you got that any humanly possible way to make it work effort from the parties involved.
And the NCAA wasn't the only entity that let its guard down. I think it would be also fair to say that, fans collectively, I think some of the emotional reaction to what happened is also in part because a lot of us, I'll put myself in that camp too, let our guard down in terms of pandemic's over, like we can't have any more cancellations because everything's opening up. There's fans in stands, but this entire time the NCAA still has its there's COVID protocols. I mean, the media was not allowed to have any face-to-face contact with players. This was not a normal Omaha experience for all of the essential players, workers, staff, etc. The only thing that seemed maybe normal was the fan experience. And I mean, we all know that the NCAA is going to be willing to stick its hand out and make money whenever it can. So that's not really surprising. But
yeah, and I would say the teams were not isolated in Omaha.
Right.
That was the other big difference. I mean, they were staying in regular hotels with regular fans and having, they were just that part of it was very much the same as well. So it's just it is an excruciating, and Justin will tell you this, I was so upset Friday. Yeah, because I was so looking forward to that game. And what a game it was, by the way.
Let's talk about it.
We'll talk about it, because those 13 guys on Friday played better than the 9 guys from Vanderbilt. Just missing a couple of key hits. One little base run error, not little, but one base running error by a guy who was a pitcher at second base. And ironically, you had the batters you wanted at the plate in a couple of key situations, and they came through for you 9 times out of 10 all year. They just came up a little short in this game, but what an effort.
They were one break away from winning that game. Yeah. I 100% agree with you. The entire
refs going them over.
Oh yeah, there were definitely. I mean that double by Mincing was definitely fair. I saw chalk, and so the umpires originally called it foul. I think this was the 3rd or 4th inning.
I think it was like the 2nd inning, maybe, or something. Okay.
It was early in the game.
Second inning
would have given NC State a runner at second with 1 out, right? And then
I believe, yeah.
And clear. I mean, it's clear as day when you look at the replay. It's fair because that chalk bounces up. The chalk won't bounce up if it didn't hit the foul line.
There's a literal ball mark on the chalk.
So the umps call it foul on the field. They review it. They correctly overturn it to fair. And then
they didn't even review it. They just kind of huddled, and I think the guy realized he saw the chalk mark,
right,
and realized that was fair. And so they talked amongst themselves and overturned it and made it fair.
Well, then Vanderbilt manager Tim Corbin comes out, argues the call. Then the overturn is overturned back to foul, and then by that point they don't want to hear from Elliott Avent. He had protested a little bit, but then it was play on. Rocker strikes him out on the next pitch, and then Rocker got a very generous strike 3 call on that next at-bat. It was 2 balls outside.
Yeah, I was about to say, Minchik, I remember, had a tough day because he clearly had a ball for a walk, and they showed the overhead camera angle, and the ball was clearly outside, and he got called strike 2, so now he's on a full count pitch, and he did one of those, get ready to throw the bat up and take his base. He had to come back, and then he struck out on the next pitch. So he had to walk. It's a tough day.
It's weekends like this that make Wolfpack fans that don't believe in NC State stuff, it makes it hard to argue against it when you have a weekend like this. I'm not saying there's like a curse or anything like that, but it's just, I mean, point to another school where this kind of stuff happens. I mean, maybe it exists out there, maybe in a parallel universe. I don't know, but I mean, how much can you put a fan base through?
Yeah, and this was particularly tough because if you knew people around the baseball team, actually they thought last year's baseball team was maybe Elliott Avent's best baseball team. And he had a legitimate ace in Nick Sweeney, who went, I think, second round to the Giants and pitched him. I thought we had a couple of nice pitcher starts in the minor league system. They had the best catcher in baseball, and Patrick Bailey. They were set up to make a really good team, and then COVID hit. And then this year's team, they thought the question was, would the pitching come around, but they definitely had the lineup to keep up with what last year's team did. And, it's just, you hate it because they were really set up to be they were exceptionally good. And, they came up just a little bit short in the ACC tournament. And then the NCAA, shut them down in Omaha. So it's kind of like this is a team that was so close to being one of the great, up there with the 74 national championship team in almost some regards. And it just didn't happen for them. And that's what hurt. That's probably what stinks, because you talk about NC State stuff. I've always argued that NC State stuff is a byproduct of NC State athletic team generally not having good margins for errors in the field of competition, so that when one mistake happens, it gets amplified. Versus at another school, that stuff may happen, but they are so good, their margin for error is much greater. And it seems like NC State has perennially been on that good but not great line of athletic teams, right? Good enough to compete, but not great enough to survive something fluky happening.
Yeah, but then you get something like this.
This is one of those exceptions. Yeah, this team was, heck, I mean, they almost beat Vanderbilt without half its roster. And with two guys pitching who were not primary pitchers. So
is there, Matt, let me ask you
this.
Let me ask you this. Can you find a silver lining that they didn't win on Friday? Because you're going to get the same outcome. You're going to get the same outcome regardless. So they win Friday. They punch their ticket, theoretically, to the College World Series Championship Series. Potentially, by that afternoon, the fan base is pumped up. They're motivated. They're hyped. They're thinking maybe there's some players coming back, for the championship series if they can get healthy.
Yeah, that quick. Now, here's what I don't know. I've heard that said a lot, and I've heard that if happened, Mississippi State, Texas last Saturday night would have been for the national championship. Congratulations, Bulldogs, with the walk-off win and everything. But what I hadn't heard is there's 2 extra days in between to do more testing. And if you would test all the way, and the game's not till Monday night, you can even test Monday afternoon. And if they came back with all negative tests on Saturday, Sunday, Monday, would that have changed the game? So I don't know that there is a silver lining in that, because I think that I've heard what you talked about. I think what gets lost is the fact that there are a couple extra days to maybe get a handle on the spread, and if there was no more positive tests, would they have been okay at that point, letting all the negative test guys back out onto the field? So.
I hadn't thought about it that way, but you raise a really great point, Matt, in the sense that, yeah, it could have changed things. But last question for you, Matt. Does Sam Highfill, does he get honored yet? He's a Wolfpack legend at this point already as a freshman. For him to go out and have the pitching performance that he did against Vanderbilt on Monday, and one of the biggest games in NC State program history, and then to go out there and get 3 hits on the best arm in college baseball. I mean, you can make an argument maybe he's not the best pitcher, but he's probably got the best arm in college baseball. Get 3 hits on that guy in his first 3 at-bats of the season. I mean, that's like stuff out of a movie. That's crazy.
He was so good. What were they calling him? Vandy's daddy?
Yeah, there were a lot of chants. Vandy's daddy was a good one. When he stepped up and grabbed the bullhorn.
Yeah.
It was a sight to see.
And the thing about Sam Highfield is he loves NC State. I mean, his parents went to NC State. His grandfather went to NC State. He's living his dream, being at NC State and playing on the baseball team. And there is some optimism. But look, Sam Highfield was really good this year, particularly at the end of the year pitching. Matt Willetson showed you an awful lot this year pitching. Chris Villeman showed you an awful lot this year pitching. Those three guys were all freshmen, and they all will be back. And they were part of a great recruiting class that also included a 6'11" pitcher named Austin Pace, who is among the many that were injured that should be back next year. So, you may get a reversal of sorts. They're going to have to replace a ton in the lineup. Maybe Sam Highfield can DH when he's not pitching.
Right,
but,
yeah.
They'll have to replace a ton in the lineup, and we'll see who they can bring in. I'm sure the transfer portal will be very active in baseball because why not? It's active in every other NCAA sport. And
NC State's sure gotten its name out there.
Oh, yeah. And if I'm a good hitter at a college looking to maybe for a new home, I'm looking at this NC State team. It's a darling of college baseball, and I'm seeing that they pretty much have openings almost everywhere across the diamond. That makes you a very attractive option. So, I think NC State baseball gotten to a point where it's about as relevant as any program on campus in an ACC and national standpoint. And so, and Sam Highfield is an excellent guy to be the face of that program. And you just wonder how could he possibly top all of that, other than maybe getting the final out in the College World Series before his career is over. But he'll be able to run for mayor of student body president. He would clear the field.
Oh, he's the big man on campus now. I mean, if NC State got to play on Saturday against Vanderbilt, regardless of the roster size, they wouldn't have a full roster, but there's Sam Highfield's hitting in that lineup Saturday if they go, right? I mean, you got to go with the hot guy, right?
Yeah, I mean, those 9 guys, if you had them all, that's a tough lineup not to put back in there.
I mean, you're definitely not getting JT Jarrett back. Yeah, I mean,
there's one opening in the lineup there. Yeah.
And the fact that Highfield in the lineup with 13 guys, what was he, batting 7th? He wasn't even batting 9th, so clearly they knew he had a little bit of pop in him. But
here's the thing about Highfield. When he came out of high school, he was not strictly a pitcher recruit. He was listed as a corner infielder pitcher, kind of figured out what was best when he got to campus. He was not even, they signed 4 big-time in-state pitchers that year. And one of them, Blake Walston from Wilmington, blew up so much that he got to the point where he could not turn down the money. And he got drafted, I think, by Arizona in the first round, and they offered him a boatload of money. But Chris Villeman and Matt Willetson and Austin Pace, all made it very clear to the MLB scouts they were not, unless they gave them Blake Walston money, they weren't coming. They were coming to NC State. And those were kind of the big 4 pitchers in the class. And so Sam Highfield was, at least on the reports I saw, was not up there with those guys. So it truly is a remarkable story. But, yeah, he was a good hitter in high school, so he just seemed to be a good baseball player. The guy who drops down and will throw sidearm on you from time to time just to mix it up. I mean, he just has a knack for being a baseball player.
All right, I say we do one more parting shot topic, and then we'll close this thing out. But at the Doak yesterday, there were a couple chants that I found interesting. One of them was one more year when Elliott Avent went up to the home plate and to talk to the Wolfpack fans. Obviously, he just completed his 25th season at NC State. He's 65 years old. There's a couple other local college sports legends down the road at Duke and Carolina by the name of Roy Williams and Mike Krzyzewski that retired this year. So retirement would not be shocking. And obviously the speculation is going to come over the offseason, but you have to I'm just curious to get your thoughts on this, Matt. I mean, how do you think the end of the season might play into things? I imagine that he's going to take some time off. He's going to be in quarantine for the next week, so he's going to have some time to think. He's going to be with Team USA, the collegiate national team, over the summer, so he's still got some more games to manage over there in Cary. But how do you think this might play into the future of Elliott Avent at NC State?
Yeah, the fact that he's doing Team USA collegiate baseball league to me that he still got a little bit more time left at NC State. I'd be surprised if he left it on this note. He's been very open that he's not going to be Mike Martin at Florida State coaching forever. And so he just signed a contract extension recently. So you kind of got an eye for how much longer he might be doing this. But I would just be surprised if this was the end of Elliott Avent at NC State.
Had they gone on to win the whole thing, you can't really write a better fairy tale ending, drift off into the sunset type ending. So,
and real quick, I do hate this the most for Elliott because it's been well documented what he's been through the last 2 years. Well, nobody loves NC State more than Elliott Avent, and the chance to put his name next to Norm Sloan and Jim Valvano would have helped heal a lot for Elliott over the last couple of years. And now he has to deal with this on top of all the other personal losses that he dealt with. And so, but I'm not sure that there's a stronger man on campus to deal with that than Elliott Avent.
Well, he certainly has the respect and love of NC State fans, even more so now than he already did. And he was already the most beloved guy on campus. So will be interesting to see. We'll be tracking it over at the Wolfpacker.com. That'll wrap up this podcast. I'm sure there will be more conversation on what unfolded this past weekend. Maybe some guests. Maybe we'll get some guests on the show over the summer, Matt, because we'll get into July. We'll need some content ideas before we get to football season anyways. So head over to the Wolfpacker.com. Use promo code PACK60 for a free 60-day trial on all of our premium content, news, and analysis. Hopefully this podcast didn't put you in a bad mood, but if it did, you want some positive news, use that promo code PACK60. Go check out the football recruiting news at thewolfpacker.com because NC State fans will definitely like what they see, what's going on over there at Carter Finley Stadium with Dave Dorn and the football coaching staff. They are rocking and rolling in the month of June in the football recruiting trail. Remember to subscribe, rate, and review this podcast wherever you listen to us. We're on the Apple Podcast app, Spotify, Google Play, everywhere you listen to podcasts. Plus, you can always watch us on our YouTube channel. If you're watching us on our YouTube channel, please subscribe and give this video a thumbs up. Drop a comment, too, while you're at it. You can say, go Pack, go Elliott Avent, screw the NCAA. I've seen a lot of that. So, just drop a comment. Helps us out. And thank you for listening. Matt, Justin, this has been the Wolfpacker Podcast.